Okay, so based on our conversation before, you can now look at this and spot the three-color grid and see that those grapes, even though they don't look like they're taking up two columns, they do. They are, right? So this is a three-column grid, and this is a three-column grid as well. It's just how the designer used it. And what you look here, this I want to just blow up. I mean, when you look at this layout, so let's discuss it. So the top headline is the gray box is what, Lauren? It's what alignment is it? Yeah, it's horizontal. And is it flush left, flush right, centered, justified, centered? And the gray box below it, what's that one doing?
It's like going off to the right.
Yeah, so although we might think it's centered, it's not really centered because it's not centered to the other one, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of students, and this is why I always say the fewer text boxes you design, you work with, that the more you know how to add your leading and your column breaks and all this kind of stuff, you don't run into that and forget to center align things, right? So that's a skew. And then, okay, so then here this is called what? Do you know what the alignment is of that one? Flush left, correct. And it's called flush left, ragged right. And this one, if it's a headline, might be, it's still flush left. This line would be the full width of the column, for example, or all the columns. And so that variation in alignment creates a bit of chaos when you compare it to the same content showing up there, right? So this is why you use grids and you focus very much on consistent alignment and layouts. So, and then you can see the grape thing, they show you 7 columns. So that's a 7-column grid. That's how they break it up for you, the blue lines. And here you can just look. It's still a 3-column. If you look at this, here's a 3-column grid layout right there. Right below it is a 3-column grid layout. It's just the graphic boxes like I demoed for you earlier in InDesign. Same thing, still sticks to the 3-column grid layout. This is still a 3-column grid layout. It's just how you're using your grid. And it creates order. That's all. And understanding that, it's like, what's that quote? Structure binds anxiety. Anybody ever heard that quote? No? If you start to think about it, you might say, take it to life and say, yeah, maybe that's true. And it's the same thing. Anxiety kind of, in a sense, creates a chaos. And so creating a structure for something eliminates the chaos. If you want to create a layout and an article that's about stress in the inner city, right? And there's cherry bombs and burnings and shootings, and people's lives feel distressed, and every day they wake up and they're frightened and they have anxiety. Well, as a designer, you might look at that article really carefully and say, okay, I want that article to be read, so I need to create a grid layout to create structure for the article so it's easy to read. But the message of the article is the angst and the anxiety and the distress about the inner city. How do you communicate that if you have no photographs, right? Just type. How do you communicate that angst and anxiety and distress if you only have type and a page? Well, you might violate the grid for a certain headline or a subhead. You might decide that type is angled and scattered in different colors and layered on top of each other so it's not visible and exploding and exploding out of things just by type, right? If you don't have a photograph to go hand in hand with the article. And your type speaks of that chaos. It might not be readable, so you obviously can't put anything in there that would be readable, but do you understand what I'm saying? You as a graphic artist have to decide what the message is and how to communicate it effectively so it gets understood and read. So if you had a whole entirely chaotic article, it couldn't get read. It would create anxiety in the person reading it. But if you created a headline or some graphic with your subhead or some way of using your type to create that kind of chaos, you would be enhancing the message in the article. Yeah? Okay. So, so structure binds anxiety. So let's see. So that's about grids. Anybody got a question about grids? That's pretty straightforward. The other thing is, we don't talk about the design principles very much in this class because you're working so much out of the book. But later in the semester, you're going to start to create some layouts of your own. You're going to step away from the book and you'll do your own graphics if you wish to, or find your own graphics to lay out. And I just want to discuss basically, we touch on this in this class, which is the design principles that you use. And it's these design principles you use to help communicate the message. And you know them intuitively, whether you've studied design or not. How you organize the elements on a page. You use alignment, which Lauren just laid out for us in our paragraph alignments. And you create balance, which we'll look at in some of the graphics below. And we focus on contrast, like lights and darks, positive, negative space. And emphasis, bless you, how you might scale something in order to make it more important to create a hierarchy on a page, and how you unify elements so they don't feel fragmented and scattered to create order on a page. So if we look, for example, we've already talked about paragraph alignments, but if we look at the three layouts in front of us here, Jay in the back there, if you look at these three layouts at the top, what do you prefer? Which one do you intuitively prefer yourself?
Possibly the far right one.
Okay, so intuitively, why do you like that one the best?
Just because it's adjusted to the right side, makes it a little bit easier to read, and then it just has like the line, or I can't really see from back here, but on the far left side, kind of just balance it out.
Okay, so you like the alignment, one of the design principles, and you like the line on the bleeding off the edge of the page on the left side because it creates balance. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you like this one?
Because the text is aligned on the far right side on the top, and then at the very bottom it's centered, but then the graphic in the middle is aligned to the left. So it's just the balance thrown off altogether.
Okay. So by not using consistent alignment, it throws off the balance. By not unifying the elements on the right-hand side of the page, this one, the bit on the left, the balance is thrown off. And what do you think about this one in the center?
It's just aligned to the right, but it doesn't have anything to balance it out on the left.
Okay.
If it was all centered, then yeah, I think that would possibly be the best one, but it's just, I don't know, something about the balance is
Okay.
just a little off.
So this one feels clean. It's aligned to the right, but you don't like all that negative space on the left, personally. Right. Okay. Yeah, Lauren.
Because even though the line's really skinny, it still adds so much.
So even though this line is just a little sliver on the page, it doesn't take up a lot of space, it enhances the layout to you. Okay. Yeah.
I feel like if that wasn't a jagged line, it'd appeal more, at least to my sensibilities, because it feels like the jagged line is just a little much.
Okay, so for you it's over the top.
Yeah.
You'd rather take this line and mimic it here.
Yeah,
That one.
something like that.
And put it there instead of having jagged. Okay, and you're the designer. And you're the designer. And you get to decide. And then you show your client both versions, then your client ultimately decides. Right? If you like it. Do not ever show your client anything you do not like. Because they'll pick it. And so if your name's on it, make sure that you only show them things that you think are acceptable graphically. Just because you can make more choices doesn't mean that you should show them all. I mean, you can tell them that, but you could essentially show them ones that you designed and then put a big red X through it and say, oh, we don't like that one because. And you can show them you did all that thinking for them. So
What
anyway.
What if they want something that's ugly?
What if your client wants something that's ugly?
Tell them they're wrong.
I have done that before. what I usually do, so that's a really good question. So to repeat for the video, what if your client likes something that's ugly? Sometimes I will have new clients come to me and they don't know me yet, so they don't know how to trust me yet, or they don't know how I can guide them design-wise. And so they might have an idea. Sorry, my brain just went to another place talking about a client. They might have a concept that they have formulated in their mind, and then they want to present it to you so you can execute it for them. And they might show you examples of things that are unattractive to you, that you would never design. And they might say, this is what I want. And you believe that is what they want, right? Because they told you that's what they want you to create. And what I will usually do is try and understand from them what it is they like about it. And chances are they might have only found those examples and don't know the world of possibilities out there. So what I might do is design to what I believe they want, and then consider what it is they want and figure out how to enhance it, how to improve it, how to make it better. And I will show them both. And I'll say, here's what I heard you tell me. And I think all those ideas were really good, but I took them further for you. I took them further and did this and this and this because it brings you this. And when you educate your client, not that they're not intelligent, it's just they might not understand why you would design something differently or why you would make those changes. When you educate your client, they're appreciative and they start to understand it. So I will show them both and gently guide them. And if they say, no, this is exactly what I want, then you say, no problem. Here it is.
So have you done something that you didn't like, but the client liked it, so you just left it that way? Or?
I'm thinking. Yeah, I'll have clients, nothing that's like horrible. Nothing that's horrible. For example, for them, and this is stuff we don't know, we'll design something for a client and they might have a product that they have to promote, and the product's just plain old ugly. And the photograph of the product that they supply you with is plain old uglier. And so you represented it in the most attractive way you possibly could, but they're like, nope, I want it big, I want it to fill up the page, I don't care that the color is off and the photograph is poor, and no matter what you do to fix it is not okay. I'm selling that product, and it's a closeout, and I want to sell it and that's what matters to me, is my dollars. That's their motivation. Because, and you guys have seen some horrifically ugly sale ads, horrible ugly sale ads. Sometimes the uglier those things are, the better. Because it's ugly, they think that it's a cheap company because it looks cheap and therefore the product's cheap. And they'll never pay attention to the fact that the price is somebody else is twice the price. So sometimes things have to look a certain tacky way in order for people to perceive that it's a sale. It's like if I took what's a cheap car?
Neon.
A neon? Neon? Okay. So if I took a neon and I put it on a big white page, I had a little headline at the bottom that said neon. There's the perfect photograph of the neon. And I wrote on it whatever tag I had. I would immediately have elevated it. It's like when you go to an expensive restaurant and you get a plate this big and you have one piece of gnocchi in the middle, right? And it's $40. And I said gnocchi wrong. Who speaks Italian?
Gnocchi.
Thank you. And I always do that wrong. Anyway, so you get the idea. You've immediately created an environment for the neon that feels like it's more high-end. So somebody who's looking for a cheaper car isn't going to be looking for that. Or it's the same thing, different marketing tricks for different things. There used to be a company called the 4-Day Tire Store, and they used to have a very specific type of marketing. They used to run newspaper ads that were full-page ads. They filled up a page with content. They told stories. They didn't make it look like a newspaper article. They weren't faking you out that way, like what's it called? advertorial or something like that. It was just their style. They just gave you black and white text all about their 4-day tire store, and they told you stories, and they had a little chatty way about doing it, and that was their thing, and that was their pitch. And they became known for that. So it became a style. Same thing with like Mother Earth catalog when it first came out, like an almanac kind of thing, and all these things. It just has a unique way. So have I done ugly ads? Not very many, but sometimes people know what they want. So I like to give them options, one that I would feel more proud of, and then they're paying my bill. So that's kind of where I go with it. Yeah.
How much marketing do you recommend that a graphic designer take or know? I mean, obviously the marketing department might be coming to you, but you might have to school them a little bit.
How much marketing skills should you have as a designer?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's probably my life philosophy. We can never know too much about anything. I don't know. My clients, I've had clients from little mom and pop businesses which have no marketing skills, and they believe they're hiring a graphic artist and not a marketing person. And when I first started doing my business, I'd do what was called media buys, which meant I would do research on all the publications that you can run ads in, for example, and learn the demographics and do all the market research and learn about the target market and do an overview for my client, which is essentially making a marketing prospectus for them. And I did all of that. And it educated me, certainly. And as a graphic artist, you need to know the market. You can't design something for anybody without having comprehension about the market. It's like, was it Drew's business, Drew's shoes? We needed to know about Drew's shoes when we marketed his business. We needed to understand the demographic. Is he going to sell shoes to my mother, or is he going to sell shoes to you? You know, who's his market, and then how do we pitch it? So as a designer, you need to have that understanding, whether your client expects you to have that information or not. It's like due diligence. You need to know it. And you know what? You're all super smart. You know who you are in the world. You know what you buy. You know what your parents buy. You know what your grandparents buy. You know what your neighbor buys. You know what the mom next door buys. You all know. So, you know, there's a certain level of sophisticated marketing that if you're a marketing major, that's fine. You'll learn it. But the rest is you're pretty smart. You got a clue what appeals to you. And chances are you'll end up drawing clients to you as a graphic artist that you are simpatico with, truly. That's who's going to gravitate to you. That's who you're going to gravitate to. So it's all going to work out. There was another question. Did you have a question?
I was just gonna go back to the ugly design thing. My mom, she owns a cookie franchise, and people will come in and they'll be like, okay, I want a yellow penguin and a dinosaur with purple polka dots and a starfish that's pink. And then they'll just absolutely love it, even though it's like horrible.
Yes. And they will love it. And that's okay. Right. I have a girlfriend who has taste that is so opposite of me. What did Sherry say to me this morning? I was colorful. That's because I think I usually wear black every day. And so if I'm wearing something other than black or white, you're thinking I'm colorful. Well, I have a friend who does not have one piece of dark clothing in their closet, and everything is about blasting color. And we're all about different styles. Same thing, my daughter's girlfriend, she is like my daughter. And she is the rhinestone queen. I mean, this girl is bling-a-rama. And that's not me, right? So there's something for everybody. And that's why you got to know your market. So if I'm designing for a client, that store is called Glitz, and they're selling bling. You know what I mean by bling, right? Okay. And it translates, right? Then I know that I have to change my little neon ad of all white page with little tiny headline. I need bling, right? I wrote an ad for my boyfriend who was selling his refrigerator, and on Craigslist, and it was a brand new refrigerator, and I thought, what do you say about a brand new refrigerator? It's white, it has a freezer on top, it's clean, and I just wrote the ad. I said, white refrigerator, freezer on top, still sparkles. And that was the ad because it got the point across, you know? I mean, I don't think that he put bottled water in it. That was about it. That's as much as he cooks. So, is that you? You're guilty. Okay. You could have bought his refrigerator. Okay, so back to these layouts. So intuitively, without me even talking about design principles with you, really, you intuitively knew what it was you liked. And as a designer, you might say, I don't have art skills to draw things, but if you take a look at this, and this is a clip art drawing, the designer opened this up in Illustrator, took this little jagged border, rotated it, copied it, put it in a new Illustrator file, rotated it 90 degrees, duplicated it twice to make it that tall, saved it as a separate Illustrator file, and placed it here. And everything's flush right, which gave an alignment to the page. And then the fact that this has these jagged edges, whether Matt likes them or not, doesn't mean it's right or wrong, trust me, okay? Those jagged edges are pointing into the page. They're like saying, hey, look at this. So they are carrying your eye across the page visually into the content of the page. And whether you have graphic design art skills or not, you can take these graphics, break them apart, reuse them, recycle them, and create continuity of design. And continuity of design would be also what Matt said with a straight line too. And you'd look at the two, and you would look at the two side by side and decide what you like better. And you won't know until you do it. So you do both is what you do. And then we talked about these elements, which Jay nailed, which was on the right side of the page. We have everything unified together, right aligned. And look at what happens when you take three scattered elements, like the square and the circle and the star, and you unify them into this cluster of overlapping elements. You've created a positive space and a negative space, and that creates balance, the negative space. And then by scaling the elements differently, you've created more interest on the page. That's all. It's just little things you start to play with as you design your pages when you know what elements you have to work with, which is back to our little Italian video of moving things around and scaling them up and down till you feel content with your layout. Now, I look at this page, and Eric, I'm going to call your attention up here. I look at this page, and tell me what you see on the page, Eric. What do you think about the colors? What graphics did they create? How they create the graphics? Talk about the alignment.
The colors go together.
Colors go together. What feeling do you get from the colors?
Just bright.
Bright. Right, they stand out. Okay, how did they create graphics on the page? What's the main what's the first element you see? What's the
The R and the E.
The R and the E. Okay, and why is that the first element you see?
Just because they look like letters.
Because they look like letters. And what? I'm sorry.
Start from the left and go to the right.
What about the scale of them on the page?
Just bigger than everything.
Yeah, they inhale the page. So if you don't have graphics, it's kind of like we talked about. If you don't have art, type is art. And so you already know how to do this. You already know how to scale up a letter. You already know how to bleed it off the edge of the page. You already know how to make it white, which is the color of paper. You already know how to make a green letter the same size. You know how to overlap it either by adjusting your kerning to sit on top of one another or by putting two text boxes on top of one another, either way. And you know how to change the opacity and transparency, right? All right. Now, can you read the headline? You can't.
Blind.
You're blind?
Yeah.
So it's not an easily readable headline. Can anybody easily read the headline? Go ahead, Ken.
Revival of the Fittest.
And was it easy for you to read it?
Yeah.
It was? Okay. And when you just look up and glance at it, did you know immediately what the headline was or not? Cedar's shaking her head. No, you didn't, right?
No, it's
Yeah.
hard to read at that angle.
Hard to read at that angle. Type rotated 90 degrees, so you got to turn your head, is hard to read. And it's a poster. Kevin's like, no, it's a snap. But Kevin's, you know.
Maybe my head is just.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So, so we look at it, and so a headline is not an easy glance at a 90-degree angle. Okay. The other thing is, can you read this type here? No. I mean, nobody can. I can't either. So what I want to talk about here is basically, one, it's an asymmetrical design. It's weighted on this side of the page, but it's balanced by these big, huge graphic letters. The designer created a tension here by putting this type like this. It's almost like two rows traveling, right? So it created a visual energy by the way they aligned the type. I mean, it was very conscious. And then they added these green elements to mimic this, again, kind of back to facing into the page. And I believe posters need to be super easy to read. Posters are like billboards. You drive past it real fast and you walk down the hall, you don't really look at it, and if you didn't catch it on the first grab, then the poster didn't do its job. Doesn't mean a poster has to be boring, it just means it has to do its job to make you stop, walk up to the poster, and then look up what it is. Does anybody know what Revival of the Fittest is about? For the longest time I thought it was a band poster. It's a type poster. It's about digital versions of classic typefaces. And then down below it's probably listing all the different typefaces and so forth. But I like the poster aesthetically. I think it's beautiful personally. It's clean, it's interesting. I like that juxtaposition of the type going like this. But on the other hand, does it meet the job? Does it do the job? Well, maybe not as well as it could. Maybe there might be other options to make it easier. Maybe Revival of the Fittest could be so much bigger. Or the type or the word revival could be rotated. Or the subhead could become more important or something. Something that when you glance at it, you understand it's a typeface poster. Yeah, Sherry.
Well, I was going to say what I like about it is like that the dot in the middle. I forget what that's called on the serif
I think it's a tail.
tail.
Or a
my eye
beak.
just wants it's like a target for my eyeballs, and then I like
No, it's
that's
a beak.
a beak.
Mm-hmm.
The beak is a target for my eyeballs, and it makes me think, oh, that's bright. What's that around it? Oh, that's a big E. Oh my gosh, that's an R. And it makes me want to like look in the middle and explore everything around it. So I kind of feel like if that were a big poster and I had time at like waiting for my train or something,
Yeah.
I might sit and
It would draw you in.
examine it
Right.
and see what it's all about.
Exactly.
But you're right. If you're just walking by and you're
Right.
in a hurry because your train's here now, you wouldn't.
And that's about hierarchy of information. As a designer, have a hierarchy of information. What's the first thing that's going to grab somebody? Then draw them in to look at it. That's what you want. Let me know what it is. Let me grab a quick message from it and then draw me in. Yeah, Lauren.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but why did they choose RE? Like I know, like Revival of the Fittest, but
Beats me. Maybe
okay.
because they're pretty. I don't know. Or regarding, RE regarding. I don't know. Nobody ever asked me that. I don't know the answer. I don't know.
Maybe just because the letters are close, like
Yeah.
size.
Or the shapes are interesting,
Yeah.
or they liked playing with them. Yeah. Yeah, Jay.
How do you get it to be like light green? You said you mess around with the opacity, but like, how do you get it? Like, when they overlap, it automatically does that.
Yeah, so. Okay, so we're going to make it white, right? Isn't that fun? Love things that hang out. Because you still know it's an R, right? That's my fave, things like that. Okay, so I'm hitting my Option key, my Shift key. I'm moving it over here. I'm making this E. There we go. I'm selecting my E. I'm going to eyedrop. I'll just make it green. I don't need to eyedrop anything. I'm going to take this text box. It's a text box. I can either go to effects right here at the top, or I can go to the effects panel, all the same thing, identical. And I'm going to just change the opacity to 30%, and it does it on its own.
When the two colors blend.
Yeah.
Okay.
You change the opacity, which is different than changing the tint. It's making it see-through. It's not just lightening the color, but it's making it transparent. And that's how it does it. Isn't that pretty?
So, if it was on the cause the color looks really like rich on the like the green on the poster,
Yeah.
but there it just looks like kind of pale. Is it because of the
Well.
yellow coming through the green?
We're going to go to my yellow. We're going to add some magenta. And there we go. And we're going to go to the green. I'm going to select it. Color green we got here. It's kind of lime green, right? All right. We'll add a little, it's a lot of yellow. That's pretty lime green. We'll take it down a notch. So it's limier. See, I'm looking at that right there. Okay, and then I'm going to take my transparency here and play with it. Tell me when you're happy.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy.
You happy? Okay, so
I just thought of something that's kind of irrelevant to this. You know, sometimes when you're working with type in InDesign, and for some reason it's highlighted with a pink highlight, but it doesn't show on the actual node.
yes,
You know what I'm talking about?
I
What
do.
is that, and how do you make that stop
I do.
happening? Because if you were doing that right now and that was showing up, you would have no idea what's going on.
well, it's funny. It's different on my screen, but on this screen it looks the same.
Yeah, I was just saying you're good.
No, we just played. You told me when to stop. I didn't even see what you see up here. And that's about learning to mix colors and being fearless, and that's all, right? It's just about being fearless. And then knowing the tools. The whole reason you start in your books and you slog through these chapters, which are very difficult, is so you learn the tools. And you're going to be the best guitarist on earth because you've practiced. I mean, that's what you're doing. And so Sherry's question was, sometimes when you have this type right here, let me deselect that box and blow this up. It has a pink outline on it, she says. In InDesign, you can change type so it becomes a vector graphic. It is no longer editable, which sounds like edible, but that's not true. It becomes a vector graphic. So it's no longer type. You can't change a letter. It's going to be a vector graphic. And how you do that is you activate your type box. You go to create outlines, and it creates anchor points. This is what a vector graphic looks like. And it's no longer a font now, so it's the workaround for font issues. So for example, when you're working in your book and you don't have a font at home, and every time you bring your artwork from your InDesign file from here to home and it says your font is missing, how many of you have had that? Okay. One way to avoid it, if you know your document is completed, is you can convert your type to outline. And I think you might be seeing pink outlines like this. Is
Well,
this?
what I mean is that it's highlighted in pink. Like, it looks like someone took a pink highlighter. and
Oh,
put it
I know
down.
what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay, I got it.
Like the letter.
I got it. Yep, I'll show you. So you do this,
Yeah.
and you open one of these documents, and this down here is pink.
Yeah.
And what that means is when it's highlighted in pink, not blue, looks like that, highlighted in pink, it means your font is wrong and the font is missing, and I'm showing you with pink highlighter why you have a bad font. Which means the only way to change your font is to go to type, find the correct font, locate the correct font here, which it should be Mesquite. You type Mesquite here, and it's not enough to type it here, you have to change all. and then done, and it shouldn't be in pink anymore.
Thank you.
That's about missing fonts. It's about incorrect fonts. Okay, so we keep digressing. So we've talked about balance. Now we've talked about asymmetry in design, where most of the type is on the far right side of the page of this poster, but yet the graphic of the R and the E created a balance for this asymmetrical design. Asymmetrical doesn't mean it's not balanced, it just means it's a unique way of aligning things. And then we look at this poster here, and this was a digitally created poster because it was, recently created. Does it look like a new design? No. Cedar, why not?
I think for me, like that typeface, it's kind of like an older typeface.
Retro typeface. What else?
And it also, I mean, the background color kind of looks like it's aged.
Yeah. The background has a mottled appearance, looks aged, and kind of like the paper got aged and stained, and it's kind of a dull color. Yep. And is that a symmetrical design or asymmetrical? Symmetrical. Yeah, centered, everything's centered. Besides the fact that Kevin can read this perfectly because it's in German, right? Can we read the type easily? Everybody think we can?
I don't think so.
Why not, Jay?
It just seems too like condensed.
Too jammed in there.
It's just the S.
The leading is super tight to read,
Yeah.
right?
And it looks like it's like I remember what you said the other day with the type Times New Roman, how like the serif on it, like it allows your eye to follow through, and I really noticed it after that. So that's what it seems like on this. Is just kind of like all mushed together, and there's no flow to it.
Okay.
And it's all caps too.
Yeah, it's too much to be all.
Okay. See, intuitively, you guys know everything. Kevin remembers that upper and lowercase letters are easier to read because your eye reads the shape of a word, and when it's in all uppercase letters, you don't see the shape of a word easily. The other thing is he said that the leading is super tight and it's all mushed together, which is true, right? And it feels a little tight. Like the size of the font, the size of the typeface is readable, but it's hard to read in all uppercase letters. Now that was a style. They were trying to emulate a style. The other thing is there's a style that clearly they chose to use with how close they put the type to the margins, which makes me not be able to breathe personally. Like I want to add about 4 inches of just more of that background space so I can breathe a little better. Is that
I'm just saying, and plus because of the capitals, it seems like they're saying like May 18th, August 31st, and then it's like not supposed to be like yelling at you.
right?
Almost.
Right. It feels like
It's
that.
supposed to look professional.
What does it say, Kevin?
Worker and middle class apartments. I don't know how it translates. Like small art. Changing. It's like a I can't think.
You can't translate the word.
Like a when you put your stuff.
Show?
Yeah,
A display?
Yeah, pretty much. Like a display, yeah.
So it's an art show
Yeah.
for the working middle class, or of working middle class style art.
Well, that I don't really know.
We don't know.
Really understand it.
The nuance of it, you don't know. Yeah. You're the only person in the world who's taken my class who can actually read this for me. So thank you. I have looked at this poster so long and I have no clue what it says. I just got the dates in there and what city to go to.
Yes.
Could you read it in German? I'd like to hear what it sounds like. 'Cause when I'm reading it with English.
Okay, so I'll start at the top. Schweizer Werkbund-Ausstellung. Arbeiter- und Mittelstandswohnungen, Kleinkunst, wechselnde Ausstellungen, 18. Mai, Zürich, 31. August.
Thank you. That was most excellent.
Is that how you said it,
No, not at all.
Well, what was it, worker bund? What is it?
Werkbund.
Okay, and does that mean worker?
It's
You don't know?
worker is Arbeiter. The first word down at
Oh.
the bottom. That's worker.
And it looks like arbiter. I want to take that into English to arbiter. Yeah. Is that how you say it?
Arbeiter.
Oh, there you go.
It's close,
Yeah. Interesting. Well, anyway, so all of your observations are excellent. Yes, all of your observations are dead on, and that's why I want you to. That's why I like this lecture. These aren't very exciting things to look at, but what you realize is you intuit all kinds of things. So let's intuit this ad here. And what's the first thing, George? You with me?
Yeah.
What's the first thing you see here on this ad in front of you?
The clock,
You see the clock. Then what's the next thing you see?
the make time,
And what's the next thing after that?
the four down,
Uh-huh.
bottom,
Okay. So, and do you know what it's for? Can you figure out what it's for?
make time for your future.
Okay, there you go. So George looked at it hierarchically. He said, first thing I see is the graphic, the clock. The next thing he says, I see make time. And that make time enhances the headline. I mean, the clock enhances the headline, make time. And then he knew what to make time for, which was the logo, Fordham College. Okay? So I look at this and I agree. I agree with George entirely. I think the hierarchy is exactly right. But it feels crowded, this ad. And George, did you even look at this down here when you looked at the ad? No. And did you look at that little gray box at the upper left corner? No. Okay. And the reason why I point that out is I find that there's a few things that as a designer, if you take it to the next level, you think more consciously of how you're going to design things. So for example, this is an ad probably placed in a newspaper. It's probably 2 columns wide by maybe 7 inches tall, and that's how much real estate Fordham College paid for. And they have a standard ad, probably, that goes from here to there. And then every time they add a new class or a new campus or a new date, because that's time specific, they add this little gray box to add on to the bottom of the ad, right? And then they add the little gray box at the top to tell you it's education for adults, not children, I guess. I don't know why they said that. But anyway, so I say, well, what would happen if I moved this clock over halfway so we lose, I'm not tall enough to reach that, so we lose this half of the clock. And we moved it over and we created all that white space. Would we still know that's an alarm clock?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you don't need to show the whole alarm clock because you're not selling alarm clocks. We don't need to know what this edge of the alarm clock looks like. So if you move that over, you still got the message. You still got that alarm clock angling into the ad. It's still a big scale, which makes it interesting. And having it bleed off the edge of the ad enhances the layout. It gives you more breathability. It gives you more white space. And that way, that white space, I mean, think about newspaper pages. This was a print ad. Think of how they're screaming with gray text content, right? If you created white space on a newspaper page, you'd create it would be a pause. It would be a little moment of silence to gather your thoughts and focus on the ad. So when you design something, you start to think, what environment am I placing this ad in? It's not enough to create an attractive ad. You have to think, what's the environment it sits in? And then how do I get it read? So again, like George pointed out, the hierarchy of elements draws us in, helps explain it, how we create that hierarchy, how much white space we have, whether we put a wall up from the content, why not just continue the ad in white? I think the fact that it's gray makes you believe, as a designer, makes you think that you're enhancing the information, like look at me, this is important. But instead, I think it separates it from the content and the body copy of the ad, and you may as well just change the scale of the type or do something else to call attention to it. That's maybe where you put the big flashing neon arrow, right down there. Anyway, so you have all these elements at your fingertips. You also have at your fingertips ink. So you could create a one-color design like we've been looking at, and just by changing tints, like we did with the letters R and E and so forth, you can maximize the wow value. So you can make a tennis shoe that's black ink, add tints to enhance the design. Doesn't cost you more money. It's just different ways of putting the ink on paper. And you can swap out the ink with a colored ink and create a little bit more wow for not more money, maybe $10 more money on a print shop because you've changed from black to a color. So not a big deal. Another thing that you have at your fingertips is gradients. And gradients are beautiful and awesome. And the first time you learn gradients, you'll be hooked and you'll never want to stop using gradients. Except when you talk to your teacher who's going to say, don't use gradients unless you have a reason to. You know, gradients are fun, they make pretty things, they blend colors, but use a gradient because it has meaning. So what I mean by that would be this. Let's say, let me get rid of that headline. Oops. It's not going to show up because it's green. And it's got an opacity to it. There. Hard to type on green and know what you're actually doing. So, for example, here you might use a gradient in your type, right? And I forget how to do that because disappearing. You want to disappearing instead? Yeah. And I'm going to switch my white to black. Diminishing is disappearing. And actually, let me do this. Let me go back to my gradient. Oops. And let me go back to my word with the gradient in it. Right here. And let me do this instead. Let me bring my green in. And did you see I brought my green in? I just dragged my swatch to the gradient panel. Did you guys do gradients yet? And, right? That's when you'd use a gradient. Does that enhance, does that enhance the definition of what we're describing? That's when you do it. It's the same thing on kerning, you know. Did I already do this for you? You did that, right?
Mhm.
See, I'm a one-trick pony, aren't I? And that's when you might choose to use some of the tools you have. You don't just use them unless you have a purpose for it. And again, it's back to if you're only designing with type, but you have all these beautiful tools at your fingertips, how can you use them?
Do you think the word space should be spaced out a lot more, and then you put like the word brand?
Okay. I think Harpo's right. Yeah. Right? Okay. There you go. And I made a typo. I was going to say, do you need more space? But I look and it's like, so you need more space? That works too, right? Okay. So back to here. So gradients are wonderful tools. The way a gradient is made is essentially you're using a solid black, and the way tints are created, like the blue shoe and the light gray appearance of black, is when things are printed, offset printed, they're printed by using dots. You send the information from a computer to what's called an image setter. An image setter would be a printer like that kind of printer, or something that makes the printing plates. And in order to put the ink on paper, it's made up of little teeny dots. And how close together those dots are and the size of those dots create the illusion of a tint, of a color tint. So these dots let's come down here. It's a different lecture. So the dots that are in here are smaller and further apart, so the white paper is showing and creating the illusion of a light blue, when really it's that dark blue ink that's being printed with. It's a one-color print job. Yeah, Sherry?
You can only do that with digital printing, I assume? 'Cause
You can only
offset
do it with
printing-
offset printing.
Offset is the one where they put it on the aluminum plate,
Yes,
right?
and it's teeny weeny dots on the aluminum plate. Yes, yes. Your inkjet printers at home, your little $30, $40 printers that have $80 ink cartridges, those are inkjet. That's like an airbrush. Those aren't dots. It just knows to spray more diffused or less. Yeah, right. The other thing is I actually think this is a bizarre example. There's another tool you have at your fingertips, which is knowing when you can use white type, reverse type, like we did here, right? Knowing when to reverse a letter. So that R is called a reverse. White type is really just the paper color showing through from your graphic. That's another way to enhance a design. And here, this is a two-color design. Does anybody think that the blue enhances the design? Do you think it was worth the big bucks, Eric? No. Mm-mm. I agree. Just by making that same reddish brownish color, whatever it looks like up there, I think would be perfectly fine. But creating a reverse there, does it make it more readable? Well, time wounds all heals. Does that make it more readable the way the designer laid it out? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think the blue makes it kind of like American.
What do you think?
Just like, cause it's like well and heals is like, you know, like positive like words, and then like time wounds all, you know? It's just like red, like.
Ah, that's a very interesting take on that. That's good. Do you think if well and heals was in red, it would feel like that for you?
No.
No. So you think it was useful?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Waste of money though.
Yeah, not where I'd put my money probably for it, but you're right. You have an interesting take on it. And the other thing is, you can obviously, do you think that we have something more readable with the word forget in green? Does that help us? Is that worth the bucks for that one?
Yeah, I don't know. Like green's just like, I don't know, probably whoever created its favorite color.
It was their favorite color. Yeah, you know, I mean, the point of these is you can use color, you can use special paper, you can reverse your type, which is the paper showing through for your letters. This is reverse type there. Those are all ways to add interest to your design, not that these are very good examples. And then the other thing is here, by overprinting colors, changing transparencies and opacities, you can create more interest because you end up blending your colors and creating more color by applying transparencies and opacities to it. So, and we'll learn how to do that further on in the semester. But you've now talked about design principles. You're pretty brilliant, all of you, that you intuit all this really well. You now know how to design with grids, which you'll start to look at things now probably more carefully, I think. And in your book, when you do that snap, wiggle, ring-a-ding CD cover, right? You're going to work with, which is chapter what, Cedar?
6.
Chapter 6. You're going to work with aligning objects, which is magical in InDesign. I used to have to do it and take hours of labor, and now you press little buttons and things magically happen in InDesign. So I'd like to transition to the tabs and tables lecture. And are there any questions about anything for the moment? Okay, then I'll close this up, not save it. I'm going to reset my workspace to here. I'm going to open up the student handout when it's ready for chapter 5 right here. And chapter 5 is interesting. You should be sure to read my instructions for chapter 5 for what to submit. I've selected my favorites out of it, although I want you all, of course, to always do everything, right, for practice. Although I've narrowed it down to what I consider are the most important assignments to comprehend. And I would really start with the tab workout. How many people have not started chapter 5? Okay. Who has started? So that's actually a lot of you. Raise them high. How many have started chapter 5? And what did you struggle with most?
I'm done.
You're done. Wasn't hard.
I'm done too.
Wasn't hard.
No.
No. Okay.
I'm just getting through the book. I mean, every paragraph of the book has its own exercise, so I
Yep.
haven't finished reading the chapter yet.
You're going to be a star. You're going to be like this master user.
What we're supposed to do though?
Yes, you are. Doesn't mean what you're supposed to do, everybody does. Yes, so you are a star. So let's talk about this because, what's that?
Make us all look bad.
Yeah, exactly. She did it. It's true. So I want to talk about the workout. I want to talk about, for example, how to align menus. I have some pet peeves that go on here that I see all the time on menus. It's not enough that I can't decide when I go to a restaurant what I want to eat, but I have to critique the menu and find the typos. So I'm going to copy this text, and in InDesign I'm going to create a new document, and I'll make it wide just so I can create a text box. And I'm going to create this text box and just introduce you to tabs, which is here. Now, one of the things I'm going to do, I copied that content there to play with it. And sadly, we lost a really good lecture, John, on grids. So we're going to see if we can recover it, because it was pretty good, right? We did demos.
Was it recording at the time?
It was, until it just stopped cold, so we don't know what's going on.
You know what we could really use is a lecture on the bugle poster.
Really? The one I hate.
We don't have a lecture on it.
That's why, because I hate it. All right, we'll do that today. I don't like it, and I'll tell you why when I show it to you, because it's painful. Okay, here's tabs. So one of the things I'm going to first look at is go to type and show my hidden characters, because I want to know if there were any tabs built into this when I copied it. And all I see here are the paragraph hard returns and the little dots for the spaces between the letters. Okay? Now for tabs, in order to apply them, you have to have all your types selected, otherwise it won't apply. So I'm just going to Command A so everything's selected. Okay, select all. Then I'm going to go to type and I'm going to go to tabs and I'm going to get this little panel that shows up at the top of my page, the top of my text box automatically. And let's just make observations here. This is a left justified tab to the left. It's what you're most familiar with. This is a centering tab. And when would you use a centering tab? When you have something on the far left, you want to center everything in the center of your page, and then you want something on the far right. You'd use a centering tab. You'd use a right-hand tab when everything is flush left and you want to align, let's say, all the dollars and cents to the right. So all pennies line up, all dimes line up, dollars line up. You'd use a decimal point for lining up your dollars also. So when I type dollars, I get pretty complicated about how I type them, which is why I'm really fussy. Now, I'm not sure what they show you. because all of these are all $1. But what would happen, so let me zoom in here. So what would happen if 2 scoops of ice cream were $12? Would that dollar sign line up with the large $1.99? No, because this is set up as flush right. And that's the Vicky pet peeve about dollars. I'll show you, okay? So let's make the 2 scoops $12 because it's going to prove my point. Actually, what else did they do here? Okay. I don't need all this. Okay. So when you, like I said, when you apply tabs, everything needs to be highlighted. And let's say I want milkshakes, sundaes, and floats indented. A little harder, I want to be like our little headline. Okay, so I don't want it indented. And they add something here called, which is the ... and that's the same thing, Jay, that you were observing with letters, which is what draws your eye across the page to where the dollar sign is. That's what the purpose is. And that is called a leader, okay? So let me not put the leader in. Let me, and look at the type here. They have a period here without a space in front of it. There's a space in front of this period and a period without a space in front of it. Bad typing, okay? Things you get to observe when you look, and it makes a difference. Okay, so I'm going to select all my type, and I'm just going to build my tabs. I'm going to start with a left-hand tab, and I'm going to put it at a 1/2 inch by clicking on the ruler, right above the ruler. I'm going to put a left-hand tab right here for at the 1 3/4 inch mark. It's still a left-hand tab for my dollar signs. Actually, let me not do that. Let me hit undo. Let me just go straight to the decimal point tab and put it right at the 2 inch mark to line up all my dollars. And you'll see all my decimal points line up, I think. We'll see. So now, because I've applied the tabs to everything highlighted in blue, if I click in front of milkshake, sundaes, and floats, they all line up. If I click in front of the dollar sign, I'm thinking, and it's not going to line up because of how I move this tab. So let me adjust my tabs. I select it all again, and I'm going to slide this over to 1/4 inch. There we go. Now when I go to the dollar sign, it should line up all my decimal points, and it did. And this is what my pet peeve is about dollar signs. Now these don't align, and that truly bugs me. My decimal point aligns and my dollars align, but I think that's unattractive. So I'm going to select everything again so I can apply it to everything. I'm going to move my decimal point over to here, but I'm going to go to my left align. Actually, I'm actually going to, I don't want to go to left align yet. I'm just going to click on a new tab, which is right here, which is a decimal point tab, and see it's orange, it's active, so I'm going to switch it, because it's active, I'm going to switch it to a left tab. Watch it change. Now it's a left tab. And now in front of my dollar, I'm going to align my decimal points. And I feel so much better now because I like having dollar signs line up, and I like having my cents line up. That makes me feel better. And then the other thing is if I want to add a leader here, I can again select all. I can go to my left tab. I'm adding it. I can type a period, space, period, and watch what happens, and watch my leader. It should work for all my leaders. Period, space, period. And it should apply, but it didn't. Let's try it again. I don't know why it didn't apply. Period, space, period. There we go. Let's just do period, space. There, that looks better. And these weird periods were text, which is why they're showing up strangely. Okay? Does everybody understand that? So that's how you do tabs. You just plan it. Yeah.
So you'd rather it look like that than line up, use the align on function and put in a dollar sign?
Oh, you know, I've never used the align on. Tell me how to use it.
You would just put the dollar sign and the align on with the tab that the dollar sign is associated with, but then it wouldn't align the decimal.
So
way.
say it again. So if this tab doesn't exist for all of these, we remove it. So you yank it off the page. I removed it.
So when you're creating the tab where you want the dollar signs to line up on, you would just put the dollar sign in the align on field.
So if I create a left tab here, I could put a dollar sign in here, is what you're telling me?
And I just learned this, you know, I'm doing it in the book, so don't, you know, I'm not the prophet on this, but supposedly it's supposed to align it.
I think you have to use the decimal align.
Oh, you have to use the decimal one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here's the decimal one. Oh, and it's having me align on the decimal point. And
Alright, so if you use
now
the
if I
decimal
use
one
the dollar sign,
instead,
it's
then
going to
that
align on the
makes
dollar
your-
sign. So now my cents aren't going to.
But at least maybe then you could have another tab to align your decimals on after that, so at least when you're typing everything, the dollar signs.
Okay, so now let me
Align.
put my decimal here. Let me get rid of this, change it to a period for the decimal.
It might just default to that.
And it's probably going to. Look at you guys are teaching me stuff. Oh, I know
You need a
why,
tab,
because I need
yeah.
another tab. There we go. So it accomplished the same thing.
Yeah, that's what they had us do on the exercise within the chapter, so.
To align on the decimal point.
But it seems like if you want your decimals to be aligned because of the odd amounts, that your method is probably better.
I don't know that's better. I never used align on. Because align on probably didn't exist in InDesign 0. And so, I mean, that really is, you know, this is my fault, you know what I mean? So we're in InDesign CS6, which is actually for me more generations away from 6 generations. And they keep adding things. And then I'm such an old habits person that this has worked for me. I do it so fast. I never had to pay attention to align on, but now I will.
Well,
I think I did know that, actually. I think another student pointed that out to me once, but it fell out of my brain. Okay, so much for tabs. Tabs are pretty straightforward. You just plan them. If you want to get rid of your tabs, you yank them off. If you want to, there's one thing I always forget to do with tabs, which is when you zoom out like this, like I don't know how to make this smaller, and somebody probably knows how to and can tell me.
There's a button on the right. That little upside down motion.
The right. And what do you have to do? It never works for me.
You have to have an active text box with
Yeah.
You have to have an active text box. See, I knew you guys would know.
snap to it.
Now it'll snap to the text box, but it's not. It never works for me. This is my great frustration.
I had that happen a couple times. And I don't know how to open and close.
Well, you know, and it's the strangest thing. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. But sometimes that works for me, and sometimes it doesn't.
What did you
Position panel above text frame. There we go. I just did. I'm doing it.
actually
Try
active
selecting the
inside
text.
of it?
Okay, let's do that. Try selecting the text. Select all. Position panel. There we go. Go figure, right? All right. Anyway, so much for that. So what John has pointed out to me is how carefully I avoid a certain project here because I think it's so poorly done. This one I have many, many, many demos of. And if you watch my video for this one, you'll see that I absolutely am unhappy with how they set up this document. They set up the document, I believe, for 5B. Yeah, let me go to InDesign for 5B. Right here. I would never set up this document like this. Well, first off, all they're giving you is an 8.5 by 11 page, and then they're telling you to float this artwork on an 8.5 by 11 page, which is at your level of brilliance now, just an insult to you, okay? So just don't take it. Just don't do it like that. And what I suggest you do instead is look at the document, and instead of creating a 3 by 7 rectangle, don't use their ridiculous 8.5 by 11 blank page template. Go to File, New. I thought I hit File, New, but I was in Acrobat, that's why. Okay. Don't save. Go to File, New. Make a single page, not facing pages. You're going to make it 3 inches wide, 7 inches tall, and because you're super smart nowadays, you're going to always add 1/8 of an inch bleed, always. And then you're going to assess this, and you're going to say, is that really a 1/2 inch margin for that little 3-inch thing? I doubt it. You're going to look and say, what margin is that probably? Well, it's probably not 1/8 of an inch. It's probably a little bigger than 1/8 of an inch. So it's probably about 1/4 of an inch. So make a 1/4 of an inch border. I mean, a 1/4 of an inch margin guide. Because you're smart and you now know how. Right? All right. Or there's many different ways to set up this artwork, and I approach it a million different ways. So I'm sorry, my brain starts to go all over the place with this. So the first thing I do with this is I look and say, okay, I've built a bleed. And then I look. Now the advantage of opening their document here is what they do for you is they let you be super lazy, and they don't mix those ink colors. They give them to you. So you know what, if you want to be super lazy, no problem. Let me show you what to do to be even lazier. When you've made your own new document right here, you can go to swatches in InDesign, and you can, bless you, you can load swatches. I'm staring at it. You can load swatches. You can go to this file, this ridiculous file that they made for you, and select it, and you're going to load the ink swatches from there and add them and be lazy, but have a perfectly sized document instead. Didn't I show you something new and cool? Yeah, I'll show you. So I went to the swatch panel. I used the pull-out menu. I'm going to load swatches. I'm going to find the document that they gave me those pretty little swatches in. I'm going to select it, and it loaded my swatches in my swatch panel. Yes?
Can you do that for brushes and all those other things by just clicking the InDesign document and not a swatch file? Brush file?
So Sherry, because she took the 110 class, knows so many things. There are no brushes to load into InDesign, so no. But
Okay.
there are things called Adobe Swatch Exchange files where you can create Adobe color swatches. And yes, you can load Adobe color swatches you've saved.
If I had a bunch of swatches on a Photoshop document, I could just open or load swatches and click on the Photoshop document.
As
and
long
suck
as you-
them out?
No, it won't suck them out of your Photoshop document unless you have an Adobe Swatch Exchange file.
Okay, so you can only take the swatches out of other InDesign files through InDesign.
Yes.
Okay.
Or an Adobe Swatch Exchange file, which is an exported. So for example,
Sorry.
Sherry's making this really hard on you guys.
I'm sorry.
You get to yell at her. Let me see. I'm not sure if I can, I don't think I can export I can't export swatches. In Adobe, you can save your swatches from Illustrator, and you might be able to, you can't save your swatches from Photoshop. You can save them from Illustrator and export them and save the swatches. And the name of the file you save color ink swatches is called Adobe Swatch Exchange. It's a .ase file. Okay.
If you place a Photoshop document into InDesign, it'll bring you swatches, whatever,
If they're spot colors.
if they're spot colors, right?
If they're spot colors, which we'll get in 3 weeks. Okay, we'll learn about that in 3 weeks. Okay, so I don't want to demo this whole thing because it's too tedious, but I want to show you the way my brain would set it up. First off, because what you know about bleeds is you know that you would never take a box, go to the trim, draw the box, select the brown as a stroke, stroke a brown, increase your stroke, and do that. You would not do that because we know that nothing cuts perfectly on a page, correct? So if you created this stroke like this, it wouldn't cut perfectly. Also, you know that the stroke can sit on the outside of your box, it can sit on the inside of your box, and it can split and sit on the center of your box. And that's going to ultimately change the size of your box. All right, you know that about strokes, I believe, by now. So I would not stroke this box. That's actually not how I would set up this document. I would actually stroke it as 0. And instead what I'd do is I'd build a box, a rectangle. I'd make it bleed to the edge. I'd go to my swatches. I'd go to the fill right there. I'd fill it with brown. And then I'd save my document. And I'd name it appropriately.
So instead of doing the border, you just do the whole background?
Yep, that's what I would do. Instead of stroking it, I'd call it Family B History. Oh, I forgot to tell you the cute little thing I just did. I went to File, Save As. I found the B folder, Family History. I clicked on the name of this InDesign document. It named my document for me without me having to type it. And I just added the name Torf. Okay? And the reason for this is this way I know it bleeds all the way to the edge. The next thing I know is that I'm going to place this graphic here, and I'm going to place this text box here. And they tell you a million different ways to handle this. So one of the other ways I can handle this, and I think this is how they show you. So I'm just showing you different things. Yeah, John, I see you. What?
Our bugler is afraid there won't be time for him.
Oh yeah, our bugler is. Okay. Watch my demo. Let me do this super fast though. What I do is I would create another rectangle. Actually, I wouldn't even create another rectangle. I would deselect this so it's not active. I'd go to File, Save As. The bugler is going to run out of time, I can tell. I go to File, Save As. I go to File, Place. See what happens when I'm hurrying. And I'd locate the graphic for family history. I find the family history PSD Photoshop document. My cursor is going to load with the graphic, and I'm eyeballing it that it's going to be about 1/8 of an inch in. Look at my XY coordinates, and about 1/8 of an inch down. And I'm going to go all the way across the page to about 1/8 of an inch, and there I place my graphic. Okay? The other thing we can do here, because none of the graphic is cropped, is I can just now bring my text box down here, and I can fill my graphic box, with a yellow. And now I've created what I need to. And then the only other box I need to create is a text box that insets in here, which I'll be able to see and go back to type. Let me deselect this. And I can now create my text box within those margin guides I started with and start to mess around with my text. Okay? So that's how I would set that up. It's just cleaner to me, but that's all up to you. All right? John wants me to do the bugler because I hate it, and he wants to torture me. The bugler is this. First off, Fun in the Sun is super easy. Pay attention to aligning things here. Again, it bothers me that all the times don't align. So when I demo the times here, my preference is all of these on the right align perfectly, but I would use a center alignment for each hyphen, and I would right align the times. Yeah?
Or you could align on the hyphen.
Yes, or you could align on the hyphen using the tool that you showed us. Exactly. Align on the hyphen, and also align on the zeros here for the hour, or the colon, or whatever. So I don't like the alignment on that one. That's a little pet peeve I have.
So you want us to change it, or?
No, you don't need to change it. I'm just telling you my pet peeve. This one I hate because there's, yeah, John?
Make sure on that beach ball, the bottom lines line up.
Okay, you heard John. Make sure your text aligns at the base here. Okay. The reason why I don't like the bugler is they do this through tables, and tables is very challenging. And we have 10 minutes for tables because we talk too much. Again, I talk too much. I'm sorry. Tables are difficult, super difficult. And actually, rather than demo the bugler, which I am happy to do on Monday if you tackle it, is I'd rather just demo tables to get started, okay? And tables is an interesting thing. I have far more fun demoing the calendar because it's so intuitive to think through tables. And the reason why I don't demo the bugler is I would never set this up as a table. I would set it up as just paragraph, 2 columns and paragraph rules. I think this is a nightmare as a table. I think it's just foolishness. And that's why I avoid it. However, let me take this text, and what they tell you to do, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to see if they have a file for us for E. Let's see if they do. E. They don't. Okay. I'm going to make a new document in InDesign. And tables is an interesting thing. Tables, what happens is you inherit text, and text is divided either by paragraph returns or by tabs. So you start to look at your placeholder text by showing your hidden characters, and you see what they've set up here. And if we go back to this page, what you really need here is you need a tab in between the number and the city, and then a hard return at the end of it. And that's, like I said, tables is all about tabs. So I'm just going to all the numbers, and I'm setting up tabs right here for what I've got. And often, and we know that July is going to be our next column. Let's see how many more I got. And if I can't find and replace because I don't want to get rid of my hard returns for the end of every line. So there we go. And now I can take all of my text, I can go to table, and I can convert my text to a table. And it's going to look for all my tabs, it's going to look for my paragraph returns, and it's going to say, turn me into a table. And you say, yep, I'm going to do that. And now I've got a table. All right? So somehow I screwed it up, which is why I don't like this. But that basically is what this is about. So what I screwed up is I added one more thing that I didn't. You can delete. Now, when you work with tables, here's what you need to know. When you work with tables, you always work with a type tool. So to make any changes or to affect change, be in the type tool. I can, with a type tool, go right here. I'm moving my cursor slowly to this line because I want to eliminate that table, that row. So I go to table, which is where you're going to do everything, and I want to delete. And what do I want to delete? I want to delete a row. Don't be afraid of tables. They're actually magically beautiful. I just think this assignment is foolish for it. And the other weird part about tables is this. The default for tables is, let's just view this. It gives you a white box, a box filled with none, and it strokes the heck out of everything. That's what tables do. And right now I'm going to just focus on having one column for all of this because I think it'll become pretty intuitive pretty soon. Now, when you want to affect change on an entire table, you have to go up to the upper left corner here and you get a diagonal, and it's going to select my whole table for me. So now I can affect change on my entire table. And this little box is magical. What this box says is, I'm stroking everything. I'm stroking your outside. I'm stroking your center lines. I'm stroking the lines in between here. It's all a 1-point stroke, and the stroke is black. If I deselect this center line, now I'm only stroking everything on the outside and the line in the middle. And if you look here, nothing stroked on the outside because that is the edge of our page. And there's only horizontal lines breaking each line here. And so what I would do here is I would have all of these active, inside, outside, center, and I'd say, you are out of luck, 0 stroke. And they all went away. Follow that? Then I want to show you how to affect change on the lines in between. So with all of that selected, now I'm going to click and drag for my 2 columns, because it's 2-column table, right? And I'm going to turn off all my strokes on it, which have 0, and go just to the center stroke right here, which is defaulting black and solid, black, 1 point. And I'm going to make them red just so you can see how stellar this should be if I did it right. Oh, I did it wrong. I filled it with red. I'm going to go to my stroke color right here and stroke it red. And now they all turned red. And that's how you affect change. Whatever's active up here is going to dictate what you're controlling. Okay? Once you start to get tangled into it, you're going to cry. Because once you make a mistake in tabs and tables, the only way to do it is just step backwards and start again. I must tell you. Now, if I wish to fill my cells, so let's look at this again. So this is a table of 2 columns. I can run my text tool over this, and I can drag my column to be that wide right here. And now I pulled it closer, which is why they want to show off and show you how to make tables out of this. I can also, and I'm not sure, I forget how to do this, so let's see, let me wing it. Let me take this text box right here, this text box, select all, and let me see if I go to Object Text Frame Options and make it 2 columns, what happens to me if I can get 2-column table out of it. And I don't know if I can. I can, okay? So I went to Object Text Frame Options. I made my text box 2 columns. I'm now going to decrease the size of my text box to right here, and that's how I made my 2-column tables. I did pretty good for hating this thing, huh?
We're going to love it.
No, it's just foolish. And here we go. So now I've created what we want. Now the reason these things down here are black is because they weren't selected at the time. They were overflowing my text box. So how I work around that is I'm going to have to highlight these lines right here. These are cells, not lines. I go back here, see my question mark, and I'm going to change it because it says, what color do you really want me? And I'm going to make them all red, and now they're red. Okay.
Wrapper tool work on those?
Oh, and I need to do it for, I don't know, but I'm going to run out of time, not going to worry about it. There we go. Now it's all red. So here we go. Now, what you all run into, everybody who does this assignment says, oh my God, this is so tedious. How do I get rid of this red line above July? So I select the July cell only. I go to the top line here, right there. I turn off all the other lines and leave them as they should be. And I go to the top line only that's active on that one cell. It's the cell for July and the cell for the state. And I'm going to turn it to none so it disappears. And then same thing happened here. It got rid of the one down below. And then the other thing is, for all these cells, I can highlight just that row of the cities. Let me go to View. And I can change the width of this cell here so it's narrower. Oh, it overflowed. It took them both. I can highlight this one cell. Let me just do it like that. That's the city cell. And look here at our table, our control panel for tables. And we're going to look for cell width right here. See that cell width, column width? And I'm going to decrease it till I don't have such chaos and I have a column in between my 2 cells like that. See? Look at that. I actually did it. So I pretty much pulled off what they wanted, except for fixing the fonts, right? Now, I think that's cumbersome. I could have done that with paragraph rules much faster and 2 columns of text, which is why I don't really like this one. but now you really have a sense of tables. Tables are very powerful. As a designer, so for example, I can control this row, and I can color it with magenta, fill it with magenta for those cells. Let's see. I can select this row. Notice it's selecting the whole flow of the table, and I can color it yellow. There we go. So you get the idea. That's your pretty fast introduction to tables. Was that helpful for everybody? Which one did you choose to do? Which tables? The calendar or the bugle?
I did both.
You did both. Did you have trouble with them?
No.
No. Okay. So, any questions besides John's? Okay. Yes, John.
On the calendar, be sure to keep your numbers off the edge. Too many might see the numbers are right on the edge.
And how you inset text on a table like this is you would go right up here and right here, see those controls? That's text inset, cell inserts. Cell inserts determine if your text is touching the edge of your cell, okay? So you can control it. You can break the chain link, and I can move it in from the left, and I can move it in from the top. You get it? All right. Have a great week. I'll see you Monday.